This is how to do the back stitch. So I have 3 different shapes here that I'm going to demonstrate. When we start the back stitch, I'm going to pull my thread through on one end at the very start of where my shape is, and then I'm going to be talking about a stitch length. A good rule of thumb for a stitch length is to go based on the size of the eye of your needle. If you go by this size, you can make sure that whatever you're stitching matches the stitch length. So if I'm using 3 strands of floss, I don't need a very large needle. If I'm using 6 strands of floss, then using this size is going to not only fit my strands, but it's going to be a nice balance for how long my stitch length needs to be for that quantity of strands. So we're starting right here at the end, and I'm just going to do a little straight stitch down, making sure that I am covering that line. We don't want to see the line on the fabric behind the thread. Then I'm going to go another stitch length over, and you can see me like trying to stab where I'm going to go. It takes some practice, but you'll eventually get comfortable with bringing your needle up in the right place. So I came through the fabric, and right now I can see that I had a little bubble on one of the strands of floss. So I want that to be even. So I'm taking my needle, gently scooping up that stitch, and then pulling it back down so that all of the strands of thread are lying in the same spot. Now once I've brought up the second stitch, I am going to take my needle, pierce the fabric again in the same hole as that first stitch. Then I bring it back down. Now, right now is a good time to check that your knot is flush with the fabric and that your next stitch is also lying close. Sometimes you get bubbles like this where the thread feels like it's taut, but you actually have like overhanging thread. So make sure to check for that as you're stitching. I'm going to come up again over here and just repeat the same process. Next, we're going to do a back stitch on this squiggly line. So let's tie our knot again. See, so I brought the tail through, pull the knot tight, and repeat. I'm going to pinch the knot here so that it doesn't slide around, and then trim next to my fingernails, trim off the tail. Now for a squiggly line, it's the same start. Come up on the end and bring your needle down to make your first little straight stitch. The main difference on the squiggly lines is that you will need to shorten your stitches through the curves. And you also may have noticed that my tail is getting really close to the end of the thread. So let's pull the needle to make the tail a little shorter and our working thread a little bit longer. Bring my needle back down through that same point that I placed my last stitch. Then once you get back into the straight sections, you can lengthen your stitch again. Next, I'm going to show you how to do a shape that connects on one part. So you can start anywhere on these. I like to start where there's going to be a little bit of a straight spot so that I can get my stitch length established. On curvy pieces in general, you might want to just shorten your stitch length a little bit so that it feels more consistent as you go. Oops, I almost lost my tail there. Let's pull that through a little bit more. When you are getting close to connecting the ends of a shape, try to plan your stitch lengths so that you don't have a crazy short one or anything like that in the middle. So I have about 2 more stitch lengths left, and it should come together in a place where it looks like you can't really tell where the start was. And you might find it difficult to stitch through that knot at the beginning, but just make sure that when you pull it up, you don't have any extra pieces of the tail coming through. If you do, you can just tug on the knot behind the fabric and it should pull it back down.